Breaking news, this is your World War III update. Only the important news before it's news, woven into a fine tapestry of novel speculation that you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. Welcome to the party, and guys, if you ain't speculating at this stage in the game, you must be an NPC in a rich man's game. And I can tell you right now, what the rich are doing, they're selling. They're selling. The rich are selling. Lots of insider trading going on. And if the rich are selling, you better start paying attention. Russia throwing up nukes in space. It's now confirmed. Today, Vladimir Putin has confirmed, indeed, the nuclearization of space is a thing. You remember a few weeks ago when Western intelligence were levying accusations that Russia was getting ready to nuclearize space? Well, it's now confirmed. Putin today comes out, I think he's talking to his governors or something like that, and he's like, hey, how is that nuclear space-based power station coming along? Now, this is a nuclear power station, they're calling it, but understand, once you cross that Rubicon of putting any fissionable materials into outer space, you've now started a new nuclear space-based arms race. Now, of course, we're just projecting onto the Russians, because you can bet your bottom dollar that we're most certainly working on something similar in the shadows. And this is just a flex, this is a troll, this is nuclear posturing. This is sending a bit of a hint to the West that, you know, we're getting ready to do stuff in defiance of any treaties which are now pretty much devoid and defunct anyways. So they're going to pursue it. And when you have a nuclear power station in space, it indeed also can be weaponized. You can use that for directed energy weapons to take out other satellites. You can use it to take out hypersonic missiles. You can use it to take out ICBMs potentially. So it doesn't matter if it's not a nuclear weapon that's going to detonate and take out all the satellites on the side of the planet that it's detonated on. Doesn't matter whatsoever. It's a new level of a nuclear space-based weaponization and escalation and proliferation. Now, the Russians are saying that, don't worry, this is just for the moon. The Chinese and us are going to be building a moon-based nuclear power station or some nuclear power spaceship or whatever it is. So don't worry about it, but that's not going to matter, okay? And honestly, at this point in time, I wouldn't be surprised if they already had something up there. In fact, I'm quite certain that they already do, and that this is just his way of telegraphing that, hey, we're going to use this if what's happening in Poland right now continues to ramp up, which it most certainly will. And we got to talk about Macron's interview. We got to talk about NATO deploying 3 army corps to Poland under the guise of various exercises. 3 army corps. I was saying corpse before, and somebody corrected me on that. But you know, it's kind of a pun. It makes sense. I mean, they are going to be corpse because right now we have new information today that came out that Belarus has received more tactical nuclear weapons, so that the Russians have moved some of their tactical nuclear weapons. And this is a new story in addition to the one that was, you know, going around last year where the decision was made to deploy tactical Iskander nuclear-based nuclear weapons into Belarus. Now, information is coming out today saying that even more nuclear weapons are moving into the space, which is why it's probably appropriate to call them army corps. But indeed, up to 100,000 troops are going to be partaking in various exercises, and these aren't going to be just temporary exercises. Permanent fixtures are being set up, like NATO training centers, signage on the roadways, new restrictions and regulations and laws, new bunkers and fortifications throughout the country and along the border are starting to creep up. Now, the Polish leadership just got back from Washington and confirmed that they are in fact going to be receiving 800 JSOM extended range missiles, and these can be put on the F-16s. Okay, so this is going to be incredibly problematic. Once the Swiss, the Swiss Army knife of the skies enters the combat zone, whether it's a Ukrainian one or not, it's going to be considered a NATO one. And this is why right when the F-16 enters the theater, and I think this is what a lot of even the highest, the most ones I respect too, military analysts get wrong in saying that the F-16 is not going to be a game changer. That's really not the point, because it's going to have to be flown from surrounding countries, unless Ukraine has some underground bases or mountains that they have, getting ready, mountain-based runways, bunker-based runways that I don't know about, and they very well could. I mean, it wouldn't be, in fact, it would make perfect sense. for them to want to do something like that. And they do have a lot of Cold War era stuff, so it's possible. But it's very likely that right when the F-16 enters the combat zone, now that they have these longer range cruise missiles that can target, I think, up to 600 kilometers, so Poland can hit Moscow from here with these missiles, it's going to have to be presumed that these F-16s are either carrying those or worse, tactical nuclear weapons. And who is going to be in Russia's crosshairs when you get one of these things in the sky? It's going to be Romania or Poland. Everybody knows that, and that's why perhaps they're postponing the delivery of these F-16s. It doesn't matter if there's 1 or 6 or 45. It's going to be viewed in the exact same way. Russia is currently enduring the largest ever coordinated attack, get this, since World War II. This is one interesting way of looking at it, because you have these coordinated drone attacks paired with this cross-border incursion of these anti-Kremlin groups, as the Western media is calling them. Just a few years ago, the Anti-Defamation League was referring to these groups as, what were they referring to them as? Oh yeah, neo-Nazis. That's right, because that's what the leader of these groups, what is it, the Russian Liberation Freedom Movement, something, I don't know what it is. I don't really care. Quite frankly, they're going to get stomped out pretty quick anyways, in spite of the fact that they're currently evacuating the border regions where these groups are invading. And these guys, they just don't get it. Every time Russia gets entangled in a war, Vladimir Putin's popularity skyrockets. So what do you think is going to happen on voting day, which is currently starting today? What do you think is going to happen at the polls? More people are going to vote for Vladimir Putin. They trust this guy. Okay, you may not like him. This is who the Russians trust. And what you're likely going to see now is he's going to have free reign to go full war mobilization mode after he gets elected. And now he's got a blank check. He's got the excuse he needs. These oil refineries that have been targeted in the past few days that have brought down the price or brought up the price of oil, bringing down Russia's oil refinement by around 12% in just a few days. That's not counting all of the other attacks on their critical infrastructure. In the past few days, you got skirmishes around nuclear weapons facilities, nuclear weapons stockpiles, or at least older ones from the Soviet era, happening in this region where these groups are coming across. Okay, so this is a highly volatile situation that's getting zero attention in the mainstream media. We are at a point where this is the closest we've ever been to nuclear war in the history of mankind, and there is zero attention. CNN doesn't even have a tab for the Ukraine war anymore, and there's a reason for that, because they know this situation is really getting serious, and they want to try to keep the public's attention away from it, knowing that most people are NPCs. I read an article the other day, and I couldn't believe this. I don't even know if it's true. Apparently, 50% of people don't sub-vocalize, like they have no inner monologue. Some people just think like in images and in visuals. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, sidebar, there's a lot of NPCs out there who are going to be led to the slaughterhouse, which is kind of what's happening with Bitcoin right now, but more on that later. Okay, so Belarus. What's Belarus doing? Well, they're getting new nuclear weapons. They're deploying tanks along the border. They're calling up reservists. They're engaged in combat readiness drills, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. That place is a powder keg, man. I mean, I don't even know how, what is going on? How are we all still here? I mean, it's TNT dynamite is everywhere. And you got guys with ignition sources running around. How has this situation not blown up in our faces yet? I don't know. A large part of the African internet, a large part of the African continent had their internet blacked out. Undersea cables were cut. 4 undersea cables were cut. It's not certain if this was the Houthis. Was this an anchor which dredged the lines and cut them? I'm pretty sure that these things are pretty well protected so that an anchor or a ship's anchor couldn't do that. So this is highly suspicious. Somebody was telling me that, hey, maybe this is something to do with Emmanuel Macron's speech today, because of course, a lot of these countries that were affected were people who don't like the French anymore, and former French colonies. I don't think it has anything to do with that. It's probably the Houthis' asymmetrical attack, might even be a false flag. Who knows? Or it could just be a trial run for how things are going to go down here in the West. Macron has nuclear postured. France, for the first time, this is the first time a leader has openly nuclear postured back to Vladimir Putin. He said that we have nukes too, not in those exact words. I'll tell you exactly what he said in a moment. And he also said there is no red lines. He's still leaving the door open for troops. I think this is exactly what a lot of people expected, but I did not expect him to threaten nuclear weapons. I mean, that's big. I don't even think I've seen Joe Biden. I've heard Joe Biden talk about how irresponsible it is and how we have a strong nuclear deterrent and this and that, but not in the same terms that Macron used. So this is big. This is very, very serious. And surprisingly, where is the UK right now? The UK is incredibly silent. And I think this is just the same old strategy that this coalition is using. Every once in a while, somebody else takes the lead so that they can be a moving target and draw the ire of the Russians. So once Macron has done his part for the next few weeks or so, Rishi Sunak's going to pop his head up, and then they're going to start talking again, and then they're going to start taking the lead. Of course, France is the largest nuclear power in the EU because, of course, Brexit, you don't have the UK. They're still, of course, a part of that orbit in that alliance and part of NATO, of course. But for some reason, France is really starting to take a lead. And it's something you might want to think about as to why that might be the case. Now, there was a story put out by, I believe it was called French News 24. I think they're a fairly popular news station. And they put out a story that said that there were French special forces moving into Romania, getting ready to possibly be deployed to Odessa. Now, you remember, I think it was, maybe it's over a year ago now, this war has been going on so long. We're already going to be getting close to like the third year of the conflict, or we're approaching the, third year of this. So you had the 101st Airborne in and around that region. So no doubt, NATO does have plans to deploy to that region because, of course, this would completely cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea. Ukraine, not NATO. Okay, they still have, what's that country called? Bulgaria and Hungary. No, it's not Hungary. Romania, of course. Jeez. It's late, guys. I apologize. It's actually not late, but it's late for me when you've been working for what is it now, 12 hours today. I get up, I grind, and I don't sleep. But look at this. These cuts, that old man cuts are coming in. Total sidebar. I'm like a squirrel today, guys. I apologize. All right. Russia is demanding full surrender. Full surrender. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's what they want. They want Ukraine to completely abdicate to Russia's interests, and I'm going to talk a little bit in depth about what Dmitry Medvedev's demands are, and of course, he is like Putin's id, the Freudian thing, the id, superego. He is the id, and Putin is like the ego. I'm not sure who the superego would be in that relationship, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Israel is about to evacuate 1.5 million Gazans, or at least attempt to. I don't know how that's going to go over. I mean, it's probably going to go over in the same way as they attempted to do the evacuation from the north when only half the population retreated, and there ended up being 35,000 civilian deaths and probably over 100,000 casualties. They're going to try to evacuate them, and of course you have this new humanitarian port being set up, which is likely just a Trojan horse for American military involvement when the war with Lebanon starts. You're starting to get pushback against Netanyahu, with Chuck Schumer coming out today and openly denouncing Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that he should step down and all this stuff. So that's a very important development. I don't think it matters who you put in there at this point. Most of the leaders are still calling for the complete and utter destruction of Hamas. And, it's like trying to take out a malignant cancer. I mean, you're going to end up killing the patient, which is what they're doing to the civilian population. So there has to be another solution proposed. Of course, you're going to see this intensify with the Houthis, with Hezbollah. Now you have Turkey apparently getting ready to move into Iraq. So it is just war is starting all across the board. Poland secretly deporting Ukrainians. There are reports from numerous bloggers that Poland is secretly deporting Ukrainians who are found in the country who came there to evade the draft, and they're sending them back to the front lines. Okay, that's pretty serious. The Canadian Armed Forces have lowered their recruitment standards. I'll talk about the details of that story. They are now saying you don't even have to take a test because apparently 60% of people, when they heard they had to take a test, they just decided not to join. Now that you don't have to take a test anymore, or if you do take the test, they don't even look at the score. Okay, so we're in great hands, aren't we? I read a story the other day and I couldn't believe it was true. There were 5 doctors helping a 50-some-year-old man. He had blue hair, of course. I believe he was a transgendered man, helping him breastfeed his infant. Okay. And he also was HIV positive. And this is a true story. Okay, so don't worry. We're in great hands. The police are saying, hey, you know, it's better off you just leave your keys in your cars because then the criminals aren't going to be kicking down your door trying to get the keys to steal your car. This is the advice that we're being given, okay, while they take away all the guns. Yeah, that's where we're at. Ocean temperatures are approaching terrifying levels. Terrifying levels. I mean, way off the chart levels. New York to Toronto, I mean, they're seeing temperatures, you know, out of this world temperatures. I think Minnesota completely destroyed the record by like 13 degrees Celsius this year. Okay, so yeah, we got that encroaching upon us as well. The U.S. is going to send money to Ukraine. I believe that, what's his face, Mike Johnson, the House guy, he's going to capitulate and they're going to settle on a Lend-Lease deal. The problem with the Lend-Lease thing is this. Okay, so what it means is, you know, this is actually how the Soviets, well, so the Americans claim, this is how the Soviets were able to defeat the Germans, was they had this Lend-Lease program. So the idea is you give Ukraine as much money as they need on the promise that they're going to pay it back. Now that presumes there's going to be a Ukraine to pay it back. Okay, and the EU is trying to do some war bond scheme as well to raise money for Ukraine. But this is all under the assumption that there's going to be something there when the smoke clears to pay it back. Now, this is a great out for the speaker, Mike Johnson, because he can appear as though he wasn't making a concession, and he can appear as though, okay, we're not giving them the money, and he's not going to be the one who's accountable for when Ukraine doesn't pay it back in the future, because how are you going to pay that back when, I mean, what's left of Ukraine as is? Yes, they're a very resource-rich nation, even though a lot of the farmland is now being contaminated. And as the Russians move along the front and continue all this shelling, all of that beautifully rich 4-meter deep topsoil is being contaminated. I mean, this is the stupidity of humankind as food prices go through the roof, as the countries and wealthy individuals of the world continue to stockpile in the shadows. Insiders are dumping stocks. Gold continues to hold the line in spite of a slight downward trend today due to mostly the US dollar rising. It was a 1-to-1. US dollar went up, gold went down. Very typical in the short term. Houthis targeted another ship today. Doesn't even barely make a footnote of the news anymore. The Russian election, of course, begins, and credit card defaults are at record levels. Wow. 18 minutes in, I haven't even started the damn video yet. Guys, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it, we just got these in stock. We got restocked because they sell out very quickly. This is the Pro 1 water filtration system. Okay, we're stocking up on these systems. This is the Berkey Killer. We got the Scout 2. This is a smaller unit. You want a gravity-based system. So how it works, just like a Berkey water system, which Berkey is in all kinds of legal hot water right now, no pun intended. It's a gravity-based system you can get in a couple sizes. It's stainless steel. You pour water in the top, you put a filter in there, and you got drinkable water. It'll filter out viruses, bacteria, and lots of different types of heavy metals and stuff like that too. So pick one up, CanadianPreparedness.com. Use coupon code SurvivalPrepper. All certifications. These guys are not going to have the issues that Berkey is having. They also have the Brita-like water filters as well that filter out something similar. Reduces over 200 contaminants, including heavy metals, chloramines, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, fluoride, and more. We know how much preppers hate fluoride. All right. Oh, that's out of the way. Let's get going here. That's just, I know you guys want a little change of scene here. What do we got going on here? Cocoa. The price of cocoa. Can you see this? Look at this. That's the price of cocoa right now. $7,455. Is that per ton? I'm not sure what that is. But look at the highest cocoa has ever been. In 1976, it was $4,500. Now, of course, I'm not sure if this is corrected for inflation or not. Regardless, this is due to climatic factors, droughts and things of that nature. Cocoa, coffee, instant coffee, sugar, salt, any spices that are going to keep for a long period of time. These are great things to stockpile. I bought a shitload of cocoa back, I think it was around here somewhere, back in the late 20-teens. And I'm happy that I did because I got it at about 1/3 of the price that they're paying right now. Chocolate, you know, don't underestimate little things like that. Great things to barter with. Credit card defaults are at record levels, the highest level since 1991. Okay, higher, way higher than during the last recession, a couple percentage points higher. Higher than during the dot-com bubble, higher than 2020. So this is not looking good. This is, and how is it that the markets are still sky high? Tell me that. This is just something for you to consider, okay? This is why the West is on the way out. The sun is setting on Western hegemony. This is South Korea's population pyramid. Population's on the bottom here. This is the young population. A healthy population should be in the shape of a pyramid. That means you have less old people, okay? These are the older people up here. No offense against old people. I'm getting there. I'm getting that old man strength like I was talking about before. And you have a lot of young people because human resources are key. Okay, if you look at a place like Africa, it is like a perfect pyramid. Okay, there's not a lot of old people. In any developed society, you're getting this really top-heavy system. And who's going to pay all these pensions? Okay, who's going to take care of all these old people? Who's going to fight the wars? Look at North Korea's population. Look at all these fighting age males coming up. It's not a perfect population pyramid because, of course, North Korea has had famines. They've had their own development of sorts, which has, in some way, shape, or form, affected their birth rates, but they still had a replenishing birth rate. South Korea is way below replenishment birth rate. I think they're at like 0.9 for 2 people. No, it's less than that. It's like 0.6, I believe. 0.6 people are born for every 2 people. That means their population is more than halving every generation. Okay, so, and you think of North Korea's is still around 2. So North Korea is going to, in spite of the fact that South Korea has twice the population right now, look at the burden that South Korea is going to have. So this is why I think South Korea is really shitting themselves right now, and Japan. Japan is screwed. Okay, I don't even know how Japan is remaining intact. If they do not invent robots, I think they're in a mad dash right now. If they're not, they should be putting everything into some kind of humanoid system that's going to replace the people and that's going to automate a lot of the work. And maybe that's what's going to happen, but I'm telling you, it's getting down to crunch time. That has to happen now because this is the exact same all around the world. All of those countries that are following the Chinese and that are following Russia. Yeah, China's population pyramid is starting to get a little skewed also. Doesn't matter. They have 1.5 billion people. Okay? All of those global south countries are following Russia, China, and Iran. And that's a problem for the West, who's getting older and older and older. What do we got going on here? These are the countries that have been hit by this internet outage. We're talking about the Ivory Coast, Liberia, Ghana, Benin, Burkina Faso, Togo, Cameroon, Rwanda, Namibia, Gabon, Nigeria, Lesotho, South Africa. The list goes on. They are all getting rocked on their internet as a result of these undersea cables, the synapses of the planet. This is the ocean heat content in the tropical Atlantic. Okay, so this is where the normal is, right? Prior to this year, this was the high point, and I believe this wasn't even last year. Okay, this is the average. So this is every other year. So between 2013 to 2022, these are the individual years. And this was last year, okay? Why that wild perturbation? We've had many El Niños throughout here. Something else happened. And we're going to have a guest on the channel in a couple days to explain exactly why this heating is accelerating and what the outcomes could potentially be. And I'm telling you, this is going to create all kinds of problems for global agriculture, for just various weather patterns, fisheries, the whole nine. This is going to completely catch a lot of people off guard. Okay, now, going a little bit deeper into tonight's stories. NATO deploying 3 army corps. They're conducting these exercises named Loyal Leader 2024 in Europe from March 5th to the 15th. This is all a part of the whole steadfast defender exercise stuff. The aim is to test the readiness of headquarters to deploy 3 army corps to the European theater of military operations. Now, Russia, and rightly so, is interpreting this as an obvious preparation to go on the offensive. I mean, how could you not interpret it in light of the current state of things? Of course, they're going to interpret it in that way. Around 5,000 military personnel from various NATO commands and headquarters are currently participating in this individual exercise. These exercises signify NATO's preparation for a potential military confrontation with Russia in Europe. Simultaneously, NATO units are conducting maneuvers near the borders of Russia and Belarus. Of course, Western propaganda portrays Russia as the aggressor. The Western military bloc is not even trying to hide that it is preparing for a full-fledged military confrontation with Russia in Europe. You'd have to be very naive to just say that this is just an exercise right now, considering that Steadfast Defender is 10 times what it was previously, 10 times the size of what it was. There are no military exercises, only World War III disguises. Somebody put that on a t-shirt. Go look it up on Redbubble. Ukrainian groups are fighting near nuclear weapons depots, or old defunct Soviet-era nuclear weapons depots. So these partisan groups that are going into, I don't have the map up today, these partisan groups that are going into Russia. Near Belgorod, there used to be nuclear weapons stored there. And the fighting, the skirmishes that are happening, are fighting very close to where that used to happen. Now, you remember when Prigozhin made a move into Russia, and there were concerns because he was rolling past nuclear weapon storage facilities and things of that nature. I'm going to chalk this up to mostly a nothing burger at this point in time. However, a message that I got from somebody who I consider a fairly reliable source as they come on this platform, this other platform that I use, I would say that they're fairly reliable and they're not posting any bullshit. They sent me this information, and they're also saying that there's 2 electrical substations in the area that could also be taken out, that are in fact powering a nuclear weapons facility in the region. So we could still see some, flashbulb event along the nuclear lines in that neck of the woods. Russia's biggest attack since World War II. This is how it's being framed, and I think rightly so, by Newsweek. The biggest attack since World War II. Okay, the Liberation Armies, as they're calling themselves, literal neo-Nazis, as the ADL refers to them as. Of course, this is in concert with the flurry of drone attacks on the region, and now they're evacuating citizens from the border regions. I think it's called Grevon, or I don't know the name of it, but it's the town that's not Belgorod, but before Belgorod. They're starting to evacuate people from that region, and it's looking like in the next 24 hours, they're threatening that there's going to be another major attack. Again, all this is going to do is empower Vladimir Putin even more. Okay, Belarus is currently deploying tanks to the border, reportedly deploying tanks to its border with NATO while tensions in Russia and strategic alliance continue to simmer amid the war in Ukraine. The Belarusian military mobilized reservists and kicked off major military maneuvers, according to the Kiev Post. Kiev Post, take it with a grain of salt, but still mostly where there's smoke, there's fire. Troops and equipment, including tanks from Belarus, 19th Guard Mechanized Brigade, were reportedly deployed to the near the country's western border with Lithuania. Of course, that's going to be close to the Suwalki corridor. Okay, 42 cars on a train were loaded up with equipment, including 9 T-72 tanks, T-72B tanks, and BMP-2 fighting vehicles. Now, that's not a lot of military equipment, but in addition to what they already have there, and in light of the fact that these nuclear weapons have come about, on the topic of the additional nuclear weapons, I'll just read you this brief piece here. The nuclear weapons that have come today comes in the wake of Russia completing a nuclear weapon shipment to its neighbor in December of last year. The president, Alexander Lukashenko, without giving specific details, announced at a meeting of a Moscow-led economic bloc in St. Petersburg that the shipments were completed in October. So why are they talking about this once again? I really do think there's a lot more than meets the eye with these exercises and these various military maneuvers that are going on. The Belarusians are calling up reservists. That ain't good. Macron apparently leaked last year. There's another phone call that was leaked. French newspaper Le Monde spoke about how President Macron had threatened to send troops to Odessa last year. Now, this comes out on the same day as France News 24, a mostly reputable news organization as far as they go here in the West, comes out with the story that French special forces are getting ready to be deployed to Romania, so that they already were deployed to Romania, so that they could quickly get into Odessa if the situation arose where they were needed. So I'm wondering why these two stories came out on the same day. That's weird. And that's something I just thought about now. I'm thinking that that's somehow related, okay? Either somebody just got their facts wrong, but where there's smoke, there's fire, guys. I would not be surprised if they just accidentally telegraphed the plan. Macron interview highlights. Okay, so Macron was interviewed today. Basically, this is the gist of what he said. We have nuclear weapons too, and we're not afraid to use them. New initiatives are coming with the EU to try to, rally for Ukraine. That Russia is an authoritarian, repressive regime. France may send troops. Russia cannot win. It's existential for Europe. If Russia wins, France will be at risk, blah, 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 blah. Russia is our enemy, but we're not at war with them, right? We're increasing weapons production. In terms of the nuclear statement, which is the only one I'm really going to get into, he says, we must first feel protected because we are a nuclear force. This is the first time you've heard any, leader, at least as far as I know, outspokenly reference their own nuclear weapons. Okay, this is how you know we've now just reached a new plateau of escalation, because this hasn't been said before. You've heard people in the UK talk about, we still have a robust nuclear deterrent, but this is different. He goes on to say, we are ready. We have a nuclear doctrine. When it comes to nuclear power, few words are needed. It is a security instrument. That gives us a responsibility to never be in an escalation situation. So this was a flex. This is nuclear posturing, the first we've seen out of France. Macron is already nuclear posturing, which is crazy. New initiatives are coming. We cannot exclude taking new initiatives at the European level. I'm pretty sure what that's going to amount to is either, seeing through these bilateral agreements that Ukraine is making with various countries, or this Eurobond scheme that they're cooking up, this war bond-like scheme for Ukraine. Russia is an authoritarian regime. On the topic of sending troops, waffling on the issue, asked about the possibility of sending troops to Ukraine, we are not sure of doing it. We're not in this situation currently, but we are not excluding this option at the moment. And I think he said something else to the effect of, if we send troops, they're not going to be for military purposes. Okay? Trying to reassure the Russians, it doesn't matter though, because at this point, they have to presume that they are there. Now, there's already NATO troops inside of Ukraine at this point. This is not a secret. This is not just rumor or hearsay or conjecture. This is proven that they have certain troops there in a non-combative role. Okay, this has been admitted to by the Pentagon and other countries. The problem is when you start getting uniformed troops in there, and you're saying that they're serving one role, but Ukraine is still fighting the Russians at the front, then, you know, they become fair game. And then once they get targeted, once it becomes public that losses have been incurred, then of course things ratchet up, and then you actually start deploying troops. And talk about being in an impasse. I mean, that is what this is at this point in time. And again, I'm continuously amazed at the paucity of attention that's being received to this issue in the mainstream media. It seems like the more severe it gets, the less they pay attention to it. Now, they just made a 7-series video about this all on Netflix. But in terms of the media talking about it, they ain't touching it with a 10-foot pole. And usually that means that something big is brewing. The black swan is brewing. This could be part of the reason why some of the insiders are trading. No doubt this market has to crash. Okay, the Schiller PE ratio is starting to approach the levels it was at during the peak of the mania back in 2021, early 2021, right before Wall Street bets led to that precipitous collapse of the markets. But that's where we're at. Apparently, the commander of U.S. Northern Command, as well as North American Aerospace Defense Command, has reported that during the first week of March, several Tu-95 Bear strategic bombers were detected and tracked through, what was this? They crossed through the I can't pronounce this, GIUK gap, the GWIC gap, which of course is short for Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom, and the USA. Okay, I learned something new. And Canadian airspace, this being the first time this has happened in over 2 years. So I presume the first time it's happened since before the war. So not completely out of the ordinary, but certainly a point of concern. Now here are the Russians' demands. They denied invitation to a Switzerland peace conference, and Medvedev, who of course is Putin's id, the id of the Russian brain, the more impulsive one who tells you exactly what they're thinking. Capitulation, demilitarization, and prohibition to set up paramilitary forces in the country. They don't want zero military. So they basically want a situation like the Gaza Strip. Okay, and they're going to play the role of the Israelis. The Ukrainians are going to be the Gaza Strip. That's what they're calling for. That's the only way something like that's going to work. Basically, they're talking about assimilating the Ukrainians into Russian society, because that's the only way that works without some sort of situation like you have in Israel and Gaza, right? The world community should recognize the Nazi nature of the Ukrainian political regime and carry out denazification of the republic's authorities under UN control. Now, this is Medvedev's words. YouTube and Justin Trudeau, don't get it twisted. Don't shoot the messenger. I know you guys don't like to have alternative points of view presented, but it is what it is. In addition, the UN will record the loss of international legal personality of the former Ukraine. Ukraine's legal successors will not be able to enter into military alliances without the consent of Moscow. I mean, none of this is going to happen. I mean, I'm not even going to read the rest. What's the point? It's World War III, man. I talked a bit about Israel moving the entire population of Rafah. That's not going to go down. There's no way they're going to be able to do that. The only way they're going to be able to do that is if this U.S. port that they're erecting right now, who are distributing 800,000 meals a day or something like that, if that's going to entice people to come to that region, which is probably what they're going to do. Now, in terms of our intelligence from our Polish friend, during a visit to Poland, the British Defense Minister, Grant Shapps, it has been announced that the Sky Sabre anti-aircraft missile system will stay on in Poland after the Steadfast Defender exercises. And I believe in his flight back to the UK today, it was interfered by GPS jamming in and around the Kaliningrad region. That was a prominent story in the newsreel today. So that Kaliningrad GPS jamming is starting to potentially get a little close for comfort in terms of escalating the conflict. During his visit to the NATO headquarters in Brussels, the Polish president, Andrzej Duda, confirmed that a permanent NATO training center for Ukrainian armed forces will be set up in Poland in the city of Bydgoszcz. Bydgoszcz? I don't know. During an interview for a leading newspaper, the chairman of the National Defense Committee of the Polish Senate and former chief of the General Command of the branches of the Polish Armed Forces, retired general, not even going to pronounce it, I'll give it a shot, he wrote it phonetically, Mirosław Rushansky? Shit. Mirosław Rushansky. I apologize to my Polish viewers. I'm doing my best. It's late. Stated that the most important decision coming out of the Polish-US summit was, of course, the JSOM extended-range missiles that can be mounted on the F-16s. That indeed is going to be a major escalation. Poland is secretly deporting the Ukrainians. You know, the Ukrainians are getting desperate. They got to mobilize 500,000 guys. I don't know how they're going to do this without causing a revolution. Apparently, there was some tiki torch protests in Ukraine last night, so there's still a very strong ultra-nationalist element present there. They always do those things in the middle of the night. I wonder why. The Polish authorities began the hidden deportation of Ukrainian men to their homeland. Currently, Ukrainians on social networks as well as public pages and bloggers associated with Ukraine report that the Polish authorities are busy pushing refugees from the neighboring country back into their homeland. Anybody between the ages of 18 to 60, okay? I guess I'm not in the clear yet either. Geez, I got a few more years to go, but it's all right. I got that old man strength. Man, I'm carbon up lately. Look at that. Looking like Popeye up in here. I've been cutting for so long that you start to deplete on a cellular level. The what is it called? The glycogen in the muscle cells depletes. So you start to look really thin and gaunt, but I'm still strong. So, but you know, you start to think, man, is it over for me? Is the muscle building phase? Because we're all natty over here, guys. You don't want to grow tits in the apocalypse. Stay off the juice. Stay off the, what do they call it? The not the testosterone, but the growth hormone. Stay off that shit because you don't want to grow tits in the apocalypse. Maybe some of you do. If that's fine, just, you know, I mean, there's doctors that'll help you breastfeed your children, but only if you have blue hair and you're 55 years old. NATO is bragging. Jens Stoltenberg bragging about sinking the Black Sea Fleet. Probably not a good idea. I mean, when you got the NATO reconnaissance planes and you got the Ukrainians using NATO missiles and now you have Jens Stoltenberg bragging about it, it's only a matter of time before we get punched in the mouth. And that's going to suck because the Canadian Armed Forces have a difficulty recruiting people at this point in time. The CAF is launching trials to address the recruitment crisis. You know, if these guys were smart, they would come to me because I could tell them how to recruit people. I mean, it doesn't take much. Like, they're so out of touch. I mean, they don't even know how to recruit people to bring them into the military. I know how to do it. I mean, if a marketing team came to me and said how I can definitely up recruitment numbers by like 50%, Canadian government, if you want to know how to do it, just contact me. You know what? You're probably listening to all my phone calls. Anyways, you know how to reach me. I'm not saying I'm going to tell you those secrets because I don't feel like sending a bunch of people off to World War III, but we're probably going to be conscripted anyways. So you might as well get some good marketing behind it. Removing aptitude tests for some applicants. Well, that's great. So you don't even need to be competent. Planning to accept recruits with pre-existing medical conditions. Kind of like that fellow who was stricken with Down syndrome, who we've seen being pestered on the Ukrainian front lines. Yeah, unfortunately, sadly, that was something that happened. Trial efforts to combat the armed forces recruitment shortfall The Department of National Defense projects a shortage of 15,000 personnel. That's probably like half our military. What else we got going on here? Relaxing medical requirements. Aims to assess medical issues on a case-by-case basis. So basically what they're saying is there's going to be no like pre-screening. Everybody gets in the door. Okay, and then once you get in, maybe if we determine, okay, this is not for you, only at that point will you be prohibited from joining the military. Rheinmetall still plans on building 4 military productions plants in Ukraine. I don't know how this is going to work. How do you have companies worth billions of dollars committing to invest in companies that are going to be manufacturing weapons in Ukraine? The only way you would do that is that if you knew that at some point in time NATO was going to move in and that there was going to be a no-fly zone imposed. That's the only way you do this. And I don't even see why they would feel the need to do this. What's the point? Put it in Poland. Put it in Romania. Why is Germany so hell-bent on putting a weapons manufacturing place inside of Ukraine? It just doesn't make sense. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this. I mean, I think, and I've long since suspected, it's because they know that eventually NATO is going to be in there. But why would you put it so close to a war zone? It just doesn't make any sense. Put it in, even put it in Moldova. I mean, war is coming to them too, but maybe they have a bit more time. As previously indicated, much of the western and south and central parts of Africa are without the internet, and it's likely that that's not going to get fixed for a long time, especially if the cables were disconnected in a war zone. That's the problem right now, as the Houthis continue to launch attacks. That means that getting ships in there for maintenance, they're not going to want to go in there for maintenance because they could potentially be killed. Mike Johnson pledges aid to Ukraine with significant changes. So it's going to take a lend-lease form. We're not going to give you the money. We're going to lend it, which is the same as giving it, because we know we ain't getting it back, because it's very likely that Ukraine is going to be destroyed, because it's a front line of World War III. Guys, if you want to help the channel out, go check out CanadianPreparedness.com. I hate self-promotion. It's not what I do. That's why I don't put ads in the first part. If YouTube puts ads on, I don't control that. But, if you don't like the ads, I would suggest the best 10 or 12 bucks a month you're going to spend is YouTube Premium. If you spend more than a couple hours a day on YouTube, it's well worth it. You don't have commercials. You can listen to a video in the background on your phone without having the screen on. That's a function I use a lot. And there's a few other perks as well. But that's the best way to support the channel. CanadianPreparedness.com. We keep a lot of local people here employed. We try to pay them as good of wages as we can in this current climate, and it's all high quality products that we've tested ourselves on the channel that I would rely on to survive when the apocalypse comes. Thanks for watching. Take care.